we will be discussing about the interactions within the ecosystems. If allow me to recall our previous discussion on the living cell. So the minute component of an organism down to the bigger one. So starting off with an atom. To follow an atom is a molecule. Following a molecule is an organelle. So padako ta ha. Then followed with a cell. Then groups of cell works together to achieve a common function is a tissue. Then from a tissue comes an organ. Groups of organ becomes an organ system. And all the systems together makes an organism. This time around, these organisms will be reacting to the other factors in the ecosystem. One or two organisms is a population. Two or more populations is already a community. Two or more community builds an ecosystem already. And these ecosystems are the ones that give life to Earth, which is the biomes or the biosphere, the life on Earth. So what I'm talking about is here, class. To start off with number 5, organism is a living thing made of one or more cells that capable of growing and reproducing. Group of organisms of the same species is population. The living organisms of an ecosystem is a community. It's like a population of one or two is a community. And then the community of one, like community of animals reacting to the community of plants. Thus, ecosystem is possible with all the living and non-living things that interacts there. And where are they situated is called biomes. In your module, I termed it types of ecosystem. These are the biomes class. No? Savanna, tundra, taiga, rainforest. These are biomes, but we just have to focus on the general terminologies there that is printed in your module class, like savanna belongs to the grassland ecosystem and the likes, right? What are the components of your ecosystem? In this frame class, you have here the living and the non-living things. The other term for living things are biotic factors from the prefix bio, which means life. Examples of biotic factors or living things, we have plants, animals, bacteria, protists, all that grows and have life are biotic factors. But when you talk about abiotic factors or non-living things, these are those that doesn't have any life. For example, soil, water, temperature, wind, sunlight, rocks, pebble, sand, those which we can see but doesn't have life, these are the abiotic factors. So I hope you can answer your module in activity 1, number 1, to identify between biotic and abiotic. Again, biotic means with life or living things. Abiotic, which means non-living things or those without life. Animals coexist with nature. So as with nature, coexist with animals. There's a symbiosis between animals and plants class, together with us human beings to plants. As in the case of photosynthesis, plants use carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and then it gives off oxygen. The oxygen that is given off by plants is used by us animals for us to breathe and we release carbon dioxide. And these carbon dioxide that we release are also again being used by the plants for their photosynthesis. But imagine class if there are no plants that will absorb the carbon dioxide that we release, all of us animals that we release. What do you think will happen to our planet Earth? It will
Will
be hot.
die. Mhm.
Yeah, worst case scenario, grabe naman si Elijah. Die ka agad. Hot muna, no? Wag muna yung die. The planet Earth will eventually die. Yes, worst case scenario, but you'll feel like the surroundings is hot because of the high concentration of carbon dioxide. See the difference in Saima, and then the atmosphere. If you can recall your memories here at IA, while passing, compare it to the moment when you pass by the man-made forest in Bilar. If you happen to pass by the man-made forest in Bilar,
Yes, sir.
di ba in the area in Bilar, di ba it's a bit cold because there is high concentration of oxygen. But here at IA, there are a few trees only that will receive or will absorb the carbon dioxide. So it's a little bit hot. Also, the addition of our place here, which is close to the sea, makes it more hot than it's used to be. That's also the reason why some teachers, like including myself, if students are noisy in a classroom, I will mention it to them. Stop talking because you're adding global warming to this classroom. Because no trees are inside the classroom. The more you talk, the more carbon dioxide that will come out in your mouth. And then imagine if there is no air condition. So worst case scenario, the room will be hot more than it is used to be. Okay. The process, by the way, of the absorption of carbon dioxide by plants is known as carbon sequestration. I will write it here, class. I hope you can see. That's the term given to plants that will absorb the excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The term there is carbon sequestration. Who will perform the so-called carbon sequestration? Plants. And other bacteria like cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria can photosynthesize. We will also talk about photosynthesis later as soon as we proceed with the second page of your module, which is talking about the transfer of energy or in the trophic level. So let's proceed then. We have here um, patterns of living spaces or the patterns of some animals in their different biomes. We have the school of fish. I think the term for a group of fishes is school of fish. And then we have a pack of elephants or an herd of elephants. Some animals live in large groups while other animals live in isolation. No? Especially
Like,
that in some other animals, they tend to uh, become cannibals, that they eat their own young. Are you familiar with that? Because in the nature of animals class, we call that survival of the fittest. Whoever gets to be the fittest in the group will tend to survive. And those which are weaklings will tend to be eaten by those which are strong. That is in the concept of competition and predation known as the non-symbiosis relationship in an ecosystem. We'll go to that one later on. So we have here patterns of monarch butterflies. They also are in groups. They migrate from one over the other. The interaction between organisms in an ecosystem class is what we call as ecological relationship. And there are two types of ecological relationship. Either they are symbiotic or non-symbiotic. The non-symbiotic examples of which we have predation and competition. So here is an example of a non-symbiotic relationship. Organisms here may cooperate, but more often they compete for survival. The first one in the non-symbiotic relationship is the predator-prey relationship, also known as predation. Predators are the large animals that will hunt the small animals, and the prey are the ones being hunted. An example of predation, we have lions and rabbits. snakes, and then the small chickens or chicks and the like. We also have eagle and uh, can an eagle eat snake? Di ba? We have a monkey eating eagle, no? They eat a
Yeah.
snake. So we also have that. That's predation. When you talk about the other non-symbiotic relationship, we have competition class. A good example of which is in the movie The Lion King. Hyena and lions are mortal enemies. They compete over the area where they can get a source of food. They compete over dominions of land. Probably we don't understand them, but in their animal instinct, they do compete. But the idea then of hyenas, why they are called scavengers, because some hyenas do compete with lions, but eventually lions are far more stronger than hyenas. So if lions will be successful in the hunting, the hyenas will just had to scavenge the leftovers of the lions. Thus, hyenas and other animals which will be out of food will just have to eat the leftovers of the lions. Then comes the competition of hyenas and vultures. Hyenas and vultures as scavengers will now compete over the leftovers of the lions. So still that is here we have the competition between hyena and vultures as the remains of the uh, some big animals which were not, or the other parts of these animals which were not eaten by the predators. They're predators. Scavengers are not detrivores class. Please put that in mind. Detrivores are also called decomposers, but hyenas are not decomposers. They're just simply scavengers. Detrivores are scavengers, but scavengers are not detrivores. Something like that, okay? So do not associate detrivores to scavengers. We go to symbiotic relationship class. When you talk about symbiotic relationship, it's like a give and take relationship. No? You give something, you'll get in return. Or you give something, you won't get in return. Still, there's symbiosis there. The first one is cooperation, but it is not found in your module. But this cooperation talks about a bigger picture. Since cooperation goes in different perspective, one should be benefited while the other should be not benefited, or it could go in cycle. The beneficiary goes with one over the other. So we get to subdivide still this cooperation into more specific ones, which is found in your module. And there are three of them, class. We call this as symbiotic relationship of animals. To start off, we have mutualism. Mutualism is a type of symbiosis which means two specific organisms benefits from each other. Example, um, a bee to a flower. A bee needs the flower for gathering of their nectars, or rather, these flowers are their source of food, which is the nectar. By the time flowers will be visited by bees, the appendages of the bees will be the idea there is when the bees goes to each of the flowers, the pollens will either drop to the female part of the flower, or it will go to another flower, and the pollens that are stuck in the appendages of the bees will pollinate these flowers. So there is now a give and take relationship between flowers and bees. As bees gets nectar from the flowers, flowers will be pollinated by the bees. So that's mutualism class. There's a give and take relationship. I think only flowers and bees are example in the module. Do you think of any other mutualism that you have in mind?
Fish and coral reefs.
Fish and coral reefs. Would you like to explain further, Elijah, how fish and coral reefs are mutually related to each other?
Uh, m- the I think the coral reefs like protect the fishes from other predators.
And then,
Um, and and, uh,
the
uh,
fishes protect the corals.
no, like I don't maybe something like that.
Probably. The answer is a yes. Mutualism exists between coral reefs and fishes. Fishes, uh, in the act of breathing, the the carbon dioxide from these fishes will be absorbed by the coral reefs for them to produce their own food through photosynthesis. But that photosynthesis is uh, in that said anong tawag nito? In the marine ecosystem, no? And then as well, the coral reefs are the ones that will serve as the house of some fishes. A good example of which is Nemo and sea anemone, no? I hope I have. Oh, I have here in the module. No, I don't have. So let's make as an example the ones in the module class. You wish to search the internet for further understanding of the items in the module, feel free to do so. Okay? But when we have our exam, please don't watch the internet for answers. Some of the ST items of what was our lesson in module 6? It's all about I forgot our lesson in module 6. What was our lesson in module 6, Angel? Module 1 rather, not module 6. Lesson 1 in second quarter. Actually, I'm done checking your work class. And then when I did check your work, most of your answers are found in the internet in the essay part. Huh? So a little request, please do not. I will credit a perfect score for answers which I firmly believe that comes from your own understanding, not from the ones in the module and not from the ones in the internet. Okay, let's proceed with the second type of symbiosis known as commensalism. Two species interacting with each other while one is benefited and the other is neither harmed nor benefited. Shamil said reproduction. Ayun. The question about there was a question about this that happens to be an essay. I just forgot what was that. So commensalism, thank you Shamil by the way. Commensalism class is a relationship between two organisms where one of the organism is benefited and then the other is neither harmed nor benefited. Now we have here an example of a jellyfish and a fish. We also have the most famous example of commensalism is an orchid to a tree. No? What do you call the what do you call the organism that benefits from the other organism? For example, tree and an orchid. How will you call the orchid in the relationship of commensalism? The orchid is the commensal, the tree is the host. Again, the one that benefits is the commensal, and then the one that is neither benefited nor harmed, it's the host. So that is commensal and host, that the symbiosis there is commensalism. But when you talk about the third one class, if commensalism happens to be that one is benefited while the other is unaffected, the third symbiosis, one is benefited while the other is harmed. So the relationship then with the host and the parasite is benefited, the host is affected. No? When we talk about parasitism, we always think of worms and other creatures similar to worms that are considered to be parasites and the likes. Another example there is a head lice to the scalp. No, they're parasites. They're harming our scalp. So please have a proper hygiene so that your your head will not have an ecosystem. No, these are the terms. This is the term that we use beforehand when we notice some graders. To not offend them, we'll simply say, Dong, please have a proper hygiene because you have already an ecosystem in your head. Something like that. Yes? Ah, I thought there's a question. Please, if you have a question, you can unmute yourselves, class. Okay, let's talk about the types of ecosystem, class. I don't have, I can hear myself. I don't have a module that will um, present the different ecosystems. So I just have to use the module from my discussion here, class. But the last part of this presentation are the factors that limits this symbiosis, class, like starvation, accidents, predation, um, parasitism, and worst case scenario there is hunting done by human beings. That will cause endangerment of the animals, or if not, um, extinction of a certain organism or a certain creature. So these are these are limiting these are limiting factors that uh, these are limiting factors or conditions that limits the growth of a population in a certain ecosystem. So if you don't have a question, I would like to ask for you to unmute yourselves. Thank you. Okay. So we have here in your module, class. I will open your module for a while. Here. So we have the different biomes, or we call it the types of ecosystem that these organisms live. To start off, we have here the aquatic, and the other one is the terrestrial. When you talk about the aquatic ecosystem, it pertains to the water ecosystem. And when you talk about the terrestrial ecosystem, these are concerned with lands and other factors on land. A subdivision of an aquatic ecosystem is called marine ecosystem and freshwater ecosystem. Marine ecosystem are those which is found mostly in the sea. These marine ecosystems are also related to the saltwater ecosystem. Whereas the freshwater ecosystem, from its name, freshwater, means they are not salty in taste. They came from springs or lakes, rivers, wetlands, ponds, and some man-made freshwater ecosystem like uh,
Spansa.
fish pan. Yeah, fish pan. Thank you for spilling the beans from my mouth, Elijah.
Welcome, sir.
And then please look at this word, class, in the marine ecosystem, estuary. Estuary means the place where fresh water and a salt water meets. Again, estuary is an area where the fresh water and the salt water will meet. You can see this estuary in Lubbock when you pass by the Lubbock Bridge. So that's the point of meetup between the sea, the Lubbock Bay, and the Lubbock River. Huh? That's an estuary. When you talk about terrestrial, these concerns on forest ecosystem, desert ecosystem, and grassland ecosystem. For forest ecosystem, you have tropical rainforest, you have rainy, wet rainforest. These are rainforests that always have the rain. Sometimes it is termed tundra in some references for biomes, tundra. And then we also have here the desert ecosystem. This desert ecosystem is it's a bare land with lack of vegetation, and most of the organisms that you can see here are cactuses or cacti. And then we have grassland ecosystem. This goes with prairies, savannas, steppes, and plateaus. No? The difference between a forest ecosystem and a grassland ecosystem is just that in a forest ecosystem, there's a high biodiversity because of the presence of some factors together with the seclusion of these forests in out of the human touch. Grassland ecosystem can be manipulated by human beings as they can be made into a rice field, or it can be made into a cornfield and the likes. Let's now proceed with the second page of your module. This is talking about the transfer of energy in tropic levels class. I think did mention already about this one. Organisms, population, community, then ecosystem, then biosphere. No? So living things can be classified further as producers, consumers, and decomposers. I think I did mention a while ago about the word decomposers, but this is the definitions of these three. Then producers are also called autotrophs. Autotrophs means they can produce their own food with the use of radiant energy from the sun. Producers or autotrophs are the ones that can produce their own food using the process known as photosynthesis. Most of these are plants and flowers. They are autotrophs. The second order consumer or the first order consumer are called heterotrophs. They cannot produce their own food, but they rely on the food from the producers. Categories of consumers can be subdivided as follows, being a herbivore, carnivore, or omnivore. Herbivore, those who eat plants. Carnivore, those who eat animals or meat. Omnivores, those who eat both plants and animals. I think there's an activity that determines activity one, number three. Determine if the following is a producer, consumer herbivore, consumer carnivore, consumer omnivore. Decomposers or detrivores are those that gets the energy from the dead things and returns it back to the soil. The term decomposers will literally decompose the dead matter and return the organic compounds that will be used to the soil for vegetation purposes. Yes, there's a chat from the activity 3. What's the activity 3? We'll go to that. Sir, number 2. Yes, what's wrong with number 2? The arrows cannot be seen. Yeah, the arrows cannot be seen because there are no arrows to begin with. You are now going to put the arrows basing from the food chain on the left, the one in the boxes. You are given the series of food chain. So you are going to create a food web from the food chain given. So in number 2. as in the instruction of letter A, use the food chains to help you fill in the arrows on this food web. One has been added for you. So the first one is slug is eaten by a bird known as the thrush. You continue the food chain there by supplying the arrows, depending on how you're going to understand the food chains. Okay. Talking about food chain class, food chain is not a chain of animals. It's not a chain of organisms from one over the other. It's a transfer of energy from one organism to the other. Though the idea there is presented as animals from one to the other, who is eaten and who is going to be eaten, but food chain predicts or pertains to the transfer of energy from one organism to the other. Take note that the law of conservation of energy is neither created nor destroyed. Energy is just transferred from one form to another. But please bear in mind that if the energy from the plants will transfer to the animals as consumers of plants, then it is not 100% of the energy that is taken by these animals. Only 10% of the energy from the plants will go to the animals, because the other 90% will be released in the environment as a form of heat during their own cellular metabolism. So for example, in this picture class, you have the plants probably will have 1000 joules of energy. If these plants will be eaten by the, what is this, carabao or tamarao or this creature, only 100 joules will be taken from by the herbivore. And then if this animal will be eaten by a bear, assuming that this will be eaten by a bear, the bear will only get 10 joules of energy. If this bear will be eaten by, there's no arrow that points to the bear and to this other carnivore. So it's just a transfer of energy, and the transfer of energy class is just 10% of the original. So where else is the 90%? The 90% goes back to the ecosystem in a form of heat. That is why if you want to gain so much of the energy, if for example you go to a certain activity that you need a lot of energy, do not eat meat, rather eat vegetables, because vegetables will give you that energy that you need for you to sustain the activity, the job, or the performance task that is given unto you. That is the law of the conservation of energy in a food pyramid, also in a food chain. When you talk about food web class, this is now the interconnectivity between different food chains. Like for example, the bird will eat this pine borer, but this bird will be eaten by another big bird, or if not, it will be eaten by a snake. So it's like an interlock of different food chains in one food web. Depending on the arrow, shall you then refer to who is being eaten and who is going to eat. But in your module class, the arrow points to the direction of the organism being eaten to the organism that will eat. But like in this one, the rat will be eaten by the snake. Okay? This lizard will be eaten by the snake. This bird will be eaten by the snake. So the direction of the arrowhead goes to the consumer, and then the tail of the arrowhead or the arrow goes um, to the one being consumed, shall we say? No? Not producers, because the producer is the are those which we call autotrophs. Here is another example of complex food web. Who eats the rabbit?
Arctic fox.
Arctic fox, Arctic wolf, snow owl. What's the other one? What's this one? Gryffindor, Grey Falcon, Gryffindor. No? Grey Falcon, rough-legged hawk, ermine, Arctic.
Arctic.
What is this? Arctic air pellets. We have fleece, and then it will also eaten by the Inuk hunter, a hunter from the Arctic region. No? The dead air can be eaten by the decomposers. So these are the decomposers. This one is not going to eat the Arctic hare. Ha? These are um, excreta of the Arctic hare, Arctic air pellets. Okay, look at this food pyramid, class. Um, the food pyramid is in triangular shape because of the idea that the energy from the producers will decrease exponentially up until the last consumer, which is found on the topmost of the pyramid. I did mention of value a while ago, but here the energy is termed kcal or kilocalories. So 10% of 1,000 is 100, 10% of 100 is 10, 10% of 10 is 1. So meaning to say, if the grasshoppers will eat the grasses contains 1,000 calories, so the grasshoppers will only have 100 kilocalories. And then if these rodents will eat the grasshoppers, the rodents will just simply get 10 calories, 10 kilocalories. So as this owl will eat the rodents, it will only get 1 kilocalorie. So if I were the owl, I'll eat grasses instead of this one. Oh? But then again, the nature of these animals are not herbivores, they are carnivores. So that is why they have these, they are placed in the topmost portion of the food pyramid, since they are going to get the least amount of energy in the uh, food chain or in the food web. Okay, so questions, clarifications regarding the discussion. Now is the time for you to raise your concerns. We have a chat here. Sir, are you going to post this in YouTube? I actually am recording it right now, so probably if I am able to upload this today, I'll post this in the Edmodo page. Other concerns? So probably I will stop the recording right now.